And there he is, Jacob. Welcome to Foul Territory. We appreciate you taking the time to be with me and AJ and Eric. And you recently wrote an article on the O's woes saying, is this the Orioles rock bottom or is it just who they are now? What did you learn from that piece?
Yeah, listen, it's been a tough start to the season for these guys. It's sort of an extension of what happened in the second half last year. Inconsistent starting pitching, offense also inconsistent, and really struggling with runners in scoring position. This team has an amount of injuries that makes it extremely difficult for them to kind of get over this hump. Zach Eflin, Grayson Rodriguez, a bunch of other starting pitchers, Colton Cowser, Tyler O'Neill. It's hard to overcome those injuries, but at the same time, with the way they're playing this past week, outscored something like 53-12. They went 1-6. Last Sunday, they got blown out 24-2, and then only won one game in the next six. It's tough to see them turning this around, but it is early. They're going to get guys back from injury, and the expected stats offensively do suggest that some of these guys are going to start to break out. But honestly, they need to tread water here in the next couple of weeks so that maybe by the summertime they can go on a little bit of a run. But it looks like they're starting to fall behind.
This is when they were supposed to be good. And don't give me listen. Injuries are injuries, okay? But every team has them. The Cubs lost Justin Steele. The Dodgers don't have Kershaw, Glass now, Snell. I mean, every team can look at it and say, "Oh, we have injuries." What do they need, first of all, to do to get out of this besides pitch better and score more runs? That's the obvious answer. And then, how much of this is on their offseason? We keep harping on this, that they didn't go out and make the moves they needed to make, whether it was a big arm, a big bat, whatever they need to do, trade some of these young guys. So the question is, how do they get out of this, and how much of this goes back to the offseason?
Yeah, so how do they get out of this? Honestly, I don't know. That's probably above my pay grade. I think in the short term, like I said, you just got to tread water. They got the Yankees coming to town, then Kansas City. The schedule in May gets a lot easier. 7 of the 8 teams that they play in May are below 500 right now. But what could they have done to avoid this? I think you hit the nail on the head there with the offseason. Listen, two things can be true at the same time. This team didn't – the injuries are a major factor here, right? You mentioned everybody has injuries, but for this team, it's tough not to say that a significant portion of this pie is the fact that the injuries have really taken a toll. At the same time, people looked at their offseason and said that they needed to acquire a starting pitcher who was close to a guarantee of being solid, at least somebody that could be reliable. Instead, they went out and got 2 guys on 1-year contracts. One of them has been good in Tomo Sagano, and the other one in Charlie Morton has a 10.39 ERA. And so I think the offseason discourse was sort of hijacked by the quote unquote ace discussion with Corbin Burns and acquiring an ace. And all of that was fair to an extent because you do need a pitcher like that for the most part to go far in the postseason. But for this team, it was less about an ace, especially when you consider the fact that Corbin Burns seemed almost like a certainty that he was going to be out west. Instead of an ace, it was about getting a starting pitcher who you could bank on, somebody that was more reliable than a 41-year-old and somebody coming over from Japan, because those 1-year deals have a high rate of missing. And one of those guys, it appears, has been a whiff. Listen, this team is 10-11 in games not pitched by Charlie Morton, and they're 0-6 when he does pitch. So I'm not saying that the only reason that this team is struggling right now is Charlie Morton and the rotation. It's deeper than that. But what could they have done? I think you have to get in a time machine, go back in time, and maybe invest more in your rotation this offseason.
Have there been answers to that? Because we've heard rumors of Sonny Gray was looked to be traded to the Orioles. We heard what came out about Corbin Burns, getting the huge deal AAV, but getting more over the long term of the contract from the Diamondbacks and wanting to go out west. Have there been answers from Mike Elias and the ownership saying, you know what, we did misstep, we're going to make the difference at the trade deadline?
Yeah, I'd say yes and no, right? So Mike has given some information about the dealings with Corbin Burns. The team did offer a 4-year, $180 million contract that would have made Corbin Burns the highest AAV pitcher in baseball, but that was a shorter deal than what he ended up getting from Arizona, and the deal from the Diamondbacks did include an opt-out. And at the same time, it was the first offseason with David Rubenstein and they did spend about $73 million, and their payroll jumped from being bottom 5 in every year under Elias prior to now being around league average, I think 15th in baseball. And so they did go out and spend money, but it's how they went about spending money. And in terms of looking at the other pitchers who were on the market, I'm not talking about the aces, right? Blake Snell's hurt right now. The chance that they were going to be able to outbid the Yankees on Max Fried was small. There weren't really any aces other than Garrett Crochet who were traded. But when you look at guys like Nathan Eovaldi, Luis Severino, Yusei Kikuchi, Nick Pivetta, guys like that would have made a lot more sense for this team. I'm not quite sure why they opted to go for Charlie Morton over those guys. Now, again, if they had signed one of those guys instead of Charlie Morton, where would this team be? I don't know, maybe a 500 team, maybe slightly below 500. I don't think there would be panic among the fan base if they had invested more in the rotation this offseason. But if they had done that, I still don't think that this team would be anywhere near where people expected them to be. And that's because of all of these other factors, the underperformance of the offense, and the injuries.
Jose Quintana's 4-0 for the Brewers. You can keep going down the list. Hindsight's 2020. But does this $73 million that the new ownership group allowed Mike Elias to spend put Mike Elias on an unnecessary chopping block that he didn't think he needed to be on because he kind of maybe punted right now, or he didn't do as well to start the season with that $73 million?
Yeah, listen, it's tough to be overly critical of Mike Elias, his regime, and this offseason, considering, generally speaking, how well this front office did at the beginning of the rebuild. And you can't forget, despite the postseason failures, that they were the American League's winningest team from 2023 through 2024. With that said, when you have an actual owner, somebody who is serious, unlike the ownership that they had previously, it does add pressure to everybody in the organization, Mike Elias especially. And so is David Rubenstein willing to look past a 10-17 start? Is he willing to look past giving Charlie Morton $15 million for a 10.39 ERA in April? Is he willing to look past a 3-year, $50 million contract for Tyler O'Neill, who's now on the injured list for the 15th time in his career? In the short term, I think so, right? But in the medium term, if this lingers throughout the season, if this bleeds into next season, if they don't get this turned around at some point, if they don't start capitalizing on what was perceived to be a championship window, then yes, the onus is on Mike Elias, and that is when the pressure will start to build.
So then the question becomes for you and for everybody that's an Orioles fan, is Mike Elias great at rebuilding and not great at taking the next step? Is he, because he was never the guy in Houston, he was the guy under the guy. So is he great at rebuilding, but maybe he doesn't know how to and there's, I don't know. It's just a question that I've seen, and Oriole fans I've talked to say maybe Elias is great at getting the prospects, but not great at taking them to the next level.
Yeah, listen, I think that's going to be something that in 5 to 10 years we can look back on and answer that question. It is something that goes through my head on a consistent basis when I look at this front office. I think the more important question when I'm looking at Mike Elias in this front office is how quick is the learning curve? So let's say that there's some partial truth there, which is that Mike Elias and Matt Blood and all of these guys in the front office, they're great at the rebuilding portion, the scouting, the development, the drafting, but maybe they're a little bit behind on some of the other aspects of this. The question is, are they going to be able to learn from the mistakes over the past couple of seasons? Are they going to be able to learn from this, or are they going to keep making the same mistakes? I look at the rotation or the starting pitching additions that Mike Elias has made since 2023. There are some real successes there, right? They went out and traded for Corbin Burnes for a year, and they did give up some prospects, but it's not like they gave up a haul to get Corbin Burnes, and he was outstanding for them. They made the best starting pitching addition at the deadline last season when they went out and got Zach Eflin, who I believe has a 2.75 ERA with the Orioles since that trade. They signed Kyle Gibson in 2023, and despite the fact that I think he had a 5 ERA, he was important for that team and was good. But then you look on the flip side, they've had some real swings and misses when they've tried to acquire starting pitchers. Jack Flaherty at the 2020 deadline had a 7 ERA. You look at Charlie Morton, 10.39 ERA right now. And then at the deadline last year, the other starting pitching addition they made was Trevor Rogers. They gave up Connor Norby and Kyle Stowers, two guys that it didn't exactly have places on the major league roster in Baltimore, especially Stowers. But those two guys are playing really well in Miami right now. They were MLB-ready bats when they traded them away, and all they got was Trevor Rogers, who started 4 games for them last season, had a 7 ERA, and is currently on the injured list. So the question for this front office moving forward, and something that I'm going to be tracking, is how do they let what's happened in the past inform their decisions in the future?
This year, there's nothing holding you back from loving your hair again. Let Nutrafol target the key root causes of your thinning hair and help you grow stronger, healthier strands from within.
Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement brand, trusted by over 1.5 million people. See thicker, stronger, faster-growing hair with less shedding in just 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol.
Building a hair growth routine is simple. Purchase online, no prescriptions required. Automated deliveries and free shipping keep you on track. Plus, with a Nutrafol subscription, you can save up to 20%.
Start your hair growth journey with Nutrafol. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and enter the promo code FOUL. Find out why over 4,500 healthcare professionals and stylists recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair. Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code FOUL. That's Nutrafol.com, promo code FOUL.
Jacob, there seems to be more questions than answers right now for the O's, but if you're looking at a silver lining, I just go to the tweet that you had on X about the schedule upcoming. You really broke it down in terms of the April opponents and what they have to look forward to. And it seems like there's a bit of an upswing. At least they could take advantage of the teams in May. Tell us more.
Yeah, so I think there's two sides of this coin, which is, let's look at if I'm going to be sort of negative or bearish about this team, there's a pretty easy case to be made. They're 10-17. Their run differential is like -40 at this point. It's just hard to envision the rotation getting back on track. And there are some young guys who have been struggling over the past, 5 months or so, that there's questions about whether they're going to turn it around. And they also play in a pretty competitive division. So that's the bearish case. The bullish case is partially this tweet, which is that the schedule so far has been difficult. And if you look at the guys who are going to be returning, presumably Zach Eflin will return in May, Colton Cowser in June, Grayson Rodriguez in July. Those are not team timelines, to be clear. That's just me guessing. And then you look at Andrew Kittredge could come back in May or June. He was supposed to be a big reliever in that bullpen. And then Kyle Bradish and Tyler Wells could come back second half of the season. There is a case to be made here that this team could easily get back on track in May. I just think they need to get to the point where maybe by the time the team gets to June 1st or even the break, where they're 500 or a little bit above 500, so that at the deadline they can go out, make a big splash, and then make a push in the second half. But the question is, they're 10-17. Let's say they lose this Yankees series, they're going to be 11-19. Then they have the Kansas City coming to town, a team that they've struggled against, and then you're looking at it, and the team's really behind the 8 ball.
Jacob, you mentioned guys struggling. I got to ask. There's 2 guys that come to mind. Well, Adley was hurt, so we'll give him a pass. I mean, not Adley, Gunnar. Gunnar was hurt at the beginning of the year, so we'll give him a pass to his early struggles. Adley Rutschman has struggled since the second half of last year. What's going on there? And then Jackson Holliday is a guy they brought up. He obviously had huge expectations. He's still young. But did they rush him to the big leagues? I know they sent him back, but did they rush him by giving him what they gave him, and does he need more seasoning?
Yeah, so what's funny about this offense, which ranks, I think, bottom 10 in baseball on runs scored and OPS, and the numbers with runners in scoring position is a big reason for that. I think they're 27th in baseball there and 6th for their last 60 in those situations. Those are fickle numbers that you would think would positively regress for them across the season, but who knows? On an individual basis, what's weird about this team is that I'm not really concerned about any of these guys individually compared with what I expected them to be. You mentioned Gunnar. I think he's 3rd in Major League Baseball in average exit velo at like 96 miles per hour. Gunnar's going to be fine. Adley Rutschman, I know the baseline numbers look like this has been an extension of what the second half looked like for him last year. The underlying numbers do not suggest that. The underlying metrics show that he has been much better at the plate. The plate discipline, the chase rate, the ability to put the bat on the ball, All of those things have been much better for him. I just think that there's been some bad luck there. Again, the expected stats for a lot of these guys have been are much better than the overall numbers. Jackson Holliday, I'm not too concerned about, just because I thought in the first half he would be about this, which is like a 230 to 250 hitter. I think his OPS is in like the 650 range. I expect him to get better as the year goes on. I don't think they rushed him. I don't know what else there was for him at AAA. I do think that it's okay if they give him some days off against left-handed pitchers, especially since Ramon Arias, like low-key under the past year, has been one of this team's best hitters. And so getting him in the lineup as much as possible is important. The really only guys that I think that there's legitimate concern about is Tyler O'Neill. He really struggled before he went on the IL, and he's always had some injury concerns. And then Ryan Mountcastle, the wall coming in was supposed to be a big boost for him. That hasn't really been the case yet. That could be something when the weather warms up, he could go on a little bit of a hot streak. But I think his OPS right now is like 550. So he's been struggling, and they really need him to be a thumper in the middle of the order. And then just one guy I want to talk about that I think is sort of forgot here, because everything about this team is about how bad the rotation is, and that's fair to focus on. Colton Cowser is a really important part of this team in so many different ways. When he's in the outfield, he turns the outfield from being a below average defensive outfielder to an above average one. When he's in the lineup, he is the guy that sees the most pitches per plate appearance of anybody in the lineup. He has the pop to hit 4, and he has the plate discipline to hit leadoff. And also just for the vibes, which aren't great right now, just because how could they be great when you've been outscored 53-12 in the past week? He's somebody that keeps things light, and he's an important part of this team. And the fact that he's been out is pretty it's been evident since he got injured.
Any idea how soon he's going to be back? Because I haven't heard that.
Yeah, we don't know. That the team loves to be pretty cagey on these things. My like mental guess is like June-ish, early June. I think the original timeline was 8 to 10 weeks when he got hurt, which was around April 1st. So I'm expecting sometime in June.
All right, well, let's talk about, it's all been doom and gloom in Baltimore. I get it, they're under 500 team. Is this Cedric Mullins' last chance with the Orioles? And if they don't turn this around, does he become a monster trade chip for a team who doesn't want to trade prospects, so they could trade some of the older guys?
Yeah, so if Cedric Mullins keeps playing like this, which is kind of vintage Cedric Mullins, 2021 Cedric Mullins, when he was a 30-30 guy, that's the way that he played in the first half in 2023 when he was this team's best hitter before he got hurt that year. And it's really the way that he played in the second half last year after he had a really tough first half. If he can keep this together for a full season and return to the type of guy that he was in 2021, this will almost certainly be his last year in Baltimore, because he's going to price himself out for, get himself presumably a 4 or 5 year contract, sort of like what Anthony Santander got, maybe a little bit more, because Cedric Mullins has the ability to play a good plus center field defense. Now, is that going to happen? I do expect some regression here for Cedric Mullins. I don't think that that's any slight on him at all. He's just been so outstanding this season. It's a little bit surprising considering that we have a 3-year sample now from 22 to 24, where he was a slightly above league average hitter and a good defensive center fielder. A player like that, let's say he regresses back to being that, a 720 to 750 OPS guy with good but not elite center field defense, at least what the metrics would show. If he ends up being that, then I think that there's a possibility that this team looks at this and says, hey, this is an important piece for us. We don't necessarily have the prospects in the minors who are ready yet. Enrique Bradfield, Vance Honeycutt, those guys aren't exactly ready to be everyday center fielders, or they won't be next year. Could the Orioles look at that and say, okay, Cedric Mullins is worth a 2-year deal? And is that possible for Mullins to take something like that? I think that could be within the realm of possibility if he ends up being what he's been the past 3 years. But if he stays this hot, I think he's going to price himself out of Baltimore. To your second question, could they trade him at the deadline? Man, Orioles fans are close to rioting right now. And if that happened, I think Orioles Twitter would probably burn to the ground. I would not rule anything out because of how shrewd this front office is. If they get to the point where they conclude that they have no chance of making the postseason, would they trade Cedric Mullins? Potentially. Remember in 2022 when they were still quote unquote rebuilding, they were a couple games back of a wild card spot, and they traded Jorge Lopez and Trey Mancini. And those trades worked out really well for them and got them important pitching prospects. But that did hinder their chances of making the playoffs that season. And then, what did we see the next year? We saw the Arizona Diamondbacks in a similar position, had just come off a rebuild. They acquired guys at the deadline, and then they go on a surprise World Series run. So nothing would ever surprise me with this team, but I would be a little bit surprised if they had to trade Cedric Mullins at the deadline.
A lot to keep our eye on for sure. Jacob, great information as always, incredibly prepared. We appreciate you being a part of Foul Territory today. You can catch him on J. Calvin Meyer on X, and you can read him in the Baltimore Sun.
Hey, everybody. Be sure to like and subscribe for more content.
We're back here every weekday, all year long, so do not miss an episode.
The videos are coming in all day. Here's another video you might enjoy.
Baseball the way it should be covered.